June 14, 2000. Moab, Utah, 11:42 a.m. Harrison Ford is standing on a film set worth $85 million. 120 people are watching him. Cameras, lights, makeup artists holding brushes. His emergency radio crackles. A woman is dying 40 kilometers away. She has 25 minutes before irreversible brain damage. Ambulances can't reach her in time. Ford has two choices. Finish the scene that's already 3 days behind schedule and costs $340,000 per day of delay, or break his contract, risk a $4 million lawsuit, and fly his helicopter to save a complete stranger. But there's a third thing nobody on that set knows. 22 years ago, Ford couldn't help someone dying. He didn't have his pilot's license yet, couldn't fly, and that person died waiting. He made a promise that day. What Ford does in the next 90 seconds will cost him everything. Here is the story. Moab Film Studios, Desert Fury Production Office, Stage 7. The temperature outside is 41 degrees Celsius. Inside, industrial air conditioning keeps it at 18. Ford is wearing a $12,000 tactical suit, Kevlar weave, custom fitted, 5 weeks of preparation. He's in the middle of take number 11 of a 30-second scene, a jump from a moving vehicle. Controlled explosion behind him. Stunt coordinator says it's safe. Insurance says it's risky. Director says it's necessary. They've been working on this single shot for 6 hours. The emergency radio on Ford's belt vibrates first, then crackles. He wears it against studio policy, always has, ever since he got his helicopter license in 1987, ever since he joined Teton County Search and Rescue. The producer told him to leave it in his trailer. Ford didn't. The radio crackles again. Dispatch code. Red level, medical emergency, remote location. Ford holds up one hand. The set goes quiet. 120 people stop moving. The director, Marcus Webb, 53 years old, 22 films under his belt, looks at his watch, looks at Ford, looks at the shot list. They're already 3 days behind schedule. The studio sent 2 executives yesterday, walked around with tablets, calculated losses, whispered about contingency plans. Webb needs this scene finished today. The schedule has no room for delays. Ford presses the radio. This is November 72 Tango Hotel. Go ahead. His voice is level, calm, but his jaw muscle flexes once, that's all. Static comes back, then a voice, female, tense. We have a code 3 medical cardiac arrest, 61-year-old female, Arches National Park, Devil's Garden Trail, remote location, no vehicle access, ambulance ETA 90 minutes from dispatch. Ford doesn't respond immediately. He processes numbers. Devil's Garden Trail, he knows it. Flew over it twice last month, 42 kilometers northeast, rocky terrain, no clearings for standard helicopter landing. Ambulance from town takes Highway 191, then unpaved access road, then 2-kilometer hike. That's 90 minutes minimum, probably more. What's her condition now? Ford asks. The dispatcher's voice cracks slightly. Husband reports she collapsed 8 minutes ago. He's attempting CPR. No medical training. We're walking him through it on phone, but... She pauses. Sir, medical estimate is 25 minutes before significant brain damage. She doesn't have 90 minutes. Silence. Long. Heavy. Ford turns off the radio, looks at the director. Webb knows what's coming. Shakes his head before Ford even speaks. Harrison, don't. Ford is already unclipping the tactical suit. His wardrobe assistant, Jenny Cortez, 31 years old, moves toward him with a robe. Ford waves her off. Starts walking toward the exit. The suit costs $12,000. He leaves it on the floor. Marcus Webb steps in front of him. You can't leave. Contract clause. Page 47, section 12.3. You leave this set without written authorization, it's $50,000 per hour. Plus production delay costs. Harrison, that's... Ford keeps walking. Webb follows. That's $340,000 per day. If we cancel the week, insurance doesn't cover it. $4 million. You'll be liable for $4 million. Ford reaches the exit, pushes the door. Desert heat hits his face like a wall. His Bell 206 helicopter sits 200 meters away. He chartered it specifically for this shoot. Told the studio it was for quick location scouting. They believed him. The real reason, emergencies. Always emergencies. The helicopter is painted white, red cross on the side. Not official, but Ford added it himself. Pays for it himself. $327 per year in maintenance just for that decal. Marcus Webb grabs Ford's shoulder. Harrison, listen to me. You walk off this set. You're breaching contract. The studio will sue. Investors will sue. You'll lose everything. Ford stops, turns, looks at Webb. A woman is dying, Marcus. Webb's face softens for half a second, then hardens again. That's not your problem. That's what search and rescue is for. I am search and rescue, Ford says. Keeps walking. 3 men in suits emerge from the production trailer. Studio lawyers. They travel with big-budget shoots now. Insurance requirements. The lead lawyer, David Greenspan, 47 years old, Harvard Law, 16 years at Paramount, holds a leather folder. Mr. Ford, we need to speak with you immediately. Ford doesn't stop. Greenspan speedwalks to keep up. You are contractually obligated to remain on set during filming hours. If you leave, we will have no choice but to pursue full legal remedies. That includes termination, penalty fees, and recovery of all costs associated with delays. Ford reaches the helicopter. His co-pilot, Jake Morrison, already inside. Jake is 59 years old, Vietnam veteran, helicopter pilot for 32 years, flew medical evacuations in Da Nang, now flies private rescue missions with Ford, volunteers, no pay. They've saved 14 people together in the past 6 years. Jake sees Ford's face, starts the pre-flight check without being asked. Greenspan steps between Ford and the helicopter door. 2 other lawyers flank him. Mr. Ford, if you board that aircraft, you are in direct violation of your contract. The studio will pursue damages in excess of $4 million. We will also seek injunctive relief, preventing you from working on any other productions until this dispute is resolved. That could be years. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Ford looks at him, doesn't blink. A woman has 17 minutes left to live. Move! Greenspan doesn't move. Ford's assistant, Michael Torres, 28 years old, runs up with a clipboard. Harrison, please, just sign a release form, something, anything, so we can say there was paperwork, please. Ford takes the clipboard, looks at it. 3 pages. Dense legal text, liability waivers, assumption of risk, acknowledgement of contract breach. He hands it back unsigned. I don't have time to read 3 pages while someone dies, Michael. Michael's hands are shaking. Then just sign it. Don't read it. Just sign. No. Ford steps around Greenspan, opens the helicopter door. Jake has the rotors warming up. The sound drowns out the lawyers' voices. Ford climbs into the pilot seat, buckles in, puts on the headset. Greenspan is shouting something. Ford can't hear him through the helmet, doesn't try to. He pulls the door shut, locks it. Marcus Webb runs up, stands in front of the helicopter, arms spread wide, mouthing words. Don't do this. Ford looks at him through the windshield, then looks at Jake. Coordinates? Jake reads from the GPS. 38.7411 north, 109.5966 west, Devil's Garden Trail, 41.6 kilometers northeast. Ford does the math in his head. Bell 206 cruises at 220 kilometers per hour, but he can push it to 240. 41.6 kilometers at 240. That's 10.4 minutes flight time, plus landing, plus stabilization. The woman collapsed 8 minutes ago. 17 minutes until brain damage. He can make it. Barely. Time check, Ford says. Jake looks at his watch. 11:47. She's got 16 minutes now. Ford nods, grips the cyclic control. His knuckles are white. Outside, Marcus Webb is still standing there. 120 people are gathered behind him now. Crew members, actors, studio executives, all watching. Some have their phones out, recording. Ford doesn't look at them. He increases throttle. The helicopter lifts off. 1 meter, 2 meters, 3. Marcus Webb steps back. The crowd steps back. Ford banks northeast, pushes the throttle past the cruise setting. The altimeter climbs, 200 meters, 500, 800. The film set shrinks below. Looks like toys, like props, like things that don't matter. Jake's voice comes through the headset. We're at 240. That's above manufacturer recommendation for this altitude. Ford doesn't respond, just flies. Below them, Utah desert blurs, red rocks, canyon walls, Highway 191 snaking through like a gray ribbon. They pass over Arches National Park entrance in 4 minutes. The GPS shows Devil's Garden Trail 3 kilometers ahead. Jake is scanning with binoculars. I see them. North side. 5 people. 1 on the ground. Ford sees it too. A small cluster of hikers, 4 standing, 1 lying flat. Even from 800 meters up, he can see the body isn't moving. Landing zone? Jake scans the terrain. Negative, no clearings, rocks everywhere. Incline looks steep. We're landing anyway, Ford says. Jake doesn't argue. They've done this before. Twice. Both times successful. Both times insane. Ford drops altitude. The helicopter descends fast. Too fast. The altimeter spins backward. 800 meters. 600. 400. 200. The ground rushes up. Ford can see individual rocks now, individual faces. A man kneeling over the woman on the ground, doing chest compressions, doing them wrong, too slow, too shallow. 100 meters, 50. The landing zone is 2 flat rocks with a 15-degree slope between them. Jake: Harrison, we can't land here. It's not stable. Ford: we're landing. He brings the helicopter down. The skids touch the 2 rocks. The aircraft tilts 12 degrees left. The main rotor is 3 meters from a cliff wall. If the wind shifts, they're dead. Ford cuts the engine. The rotor's slow. Stop. Silence. 4 hikers are staring at them, mouths open. The 5th person, the woman on the ground, isn't moving. Her lips are blue. Her skin is gray. The man doing chest compressions looks up. His face is wet. Tears. Or sweat, or both. He's 63 years old, white hair, hiking boots. His hands are shaking. He's been doing CPR for 14 minutes. He stops when he sees Ford and Jake. Ford jumps out, doesn't close the helicopter door, runs to the woman, kneels, checks pulse, nothing, checks breathing, nothing. Looks at the husband. How long since she collapsed? The man's voice breaks. 14 minutes. Maybe 15, I don't know. I called 911. They said to do CPR. I've been doing it, but she's not. Ford takes over. 30 chest compressions, 2 breaths. Jake is pulling equipment from the helicopter. Portable defibrillator, oxygen tank, emergency medical kit. Ford keeps compressing. The woman's ribs flex under his palms. He counts out loud. 1, 2, 3, 4. Jake arrives with the defibrillator. They attach the pads. The machine analyzes. 2 seconds, 5 seconds, then, shock advised. Nobody speaks. Ford charges the defibrillator. The machine whines, high-pitched. Then, stand clear. Jake pulls back. The hikers pull back. The husband doesn't move. Ford has to push him back. Sir, you need to step away. The man stumbles backward. Ford presses the button. The woman's body jolts. Once, her back arches, then falls flat again. The defibrillator reanalyzes. 5 seconds. No shock advised. Continue CPR. Ford goes back to compressions. Jake sets up oxygen. They work in synchronized silence. Ford compresses. Jake breathes for her. They don't speak. Don't need to. They've done this 17 times before. 14 successes. 3 failures. Ford doesn't think about the 3 failures. Thinks about the 14. Thinks about the time in Jackson Hole when they brought back a man who'd been down for 19 minutes. Thinks about the woman in Cody who walked out of the hospital 6 weeks later. Thinks about the fact that this woman, Sarah Chen, according to her ID on the ground, has a name, has a husband, has a life. 2 minutes of CPR. The defibrillator analyzes again. Shock advised. Ford charges it, clears everyone, shocks her. Her body jolts again, this time differently. This time her eyes flutter just for a second, then close again. But it's something. The defibrillator. No shock advised, check pulse. Jake checks carotid pulse, waits. 3 seconds, 5 seconds. Then, we have a pulse, weak, 40 per minute. But it's there. Sarah Chen's lips are still blue, but less blue than before. Her skin is still grey, but less grey. Ford and Jake stabilize her. Oxygen mask, cervical collar. They lift her onto a stretcher, carry her to the helicopter. The husband tries to follow. Ford, what's your name, sir? Robert Chen. His voice is barely audible. Ford, Robert, we can only take her. No room for passengers. But follow Highway 191 to Moab, St. Mary's Hospital. We'll meet you there. Robert nods. Doesn't argue. He understands. The 3 other hikers are already offering him a ride. Ford and Jake load Sarah into the helicopter, strap her down. Jake monitors vitals. Ford climbs back into the pilot seat, starts the rotors. The helicopter lifts off the unstable rocks. For a moment, the left skid scrapes stone, metal on rock. Then they're airborne. Ford banks south, pushes throttle again, 240 kilometers per hour. St. Mary's Hospital is 32 kilometers away, 8 minutes. Jake's voice through the headset. Pulse is stabilizing, 55 per minute now. Oxygen saturation, 78%, rising. Ford doesn't respond, just flies. Below them, Highway 191 is a straight line pointing toward Moab. They follow it. The landscape blurs. Red becomes brown, becomes grey, becomes the edge of town. Buildings appear, small at first, then larger. Ford can see the hospital. White building, red cross on the roof. Helipad marked with yellow paint. 7 minutes after takeoff, they land on the helipad. The rotors are still spinning when the emergency team rushes out. Ford and Jake hand Sarah Chen over. 4 nurses, 2 doctors. They take her inside. Ford watches them disappear through the doors. Then he sits back in the pilot seat. Doesn't move, doesn't speak. Jake is filling out the flight log, writing down times, coordinates, patient condition on arrival. Ford's hands are still on the controls. His knuckles are still white. Jake finishes writing, looks at Ford. She's going to make it. You know that, right? We got her in time. Ford nods. Once. Barely. Jake. You okay? Ford doesn't answer. Just stares at the hospital doors, thinking about 22 years ago, thinking about the person he couldn't save, thinking about the promise he made. 3 days later, Ford is back on set. The production didn't stop. They filmed around him, used his stunt double for wide shots, saved the close-ups. The schedule is now 5 days behind. The losses are calculated at $1,800,000. Ford walks into the production office. Marcus Webb is there. The 2 studio lawyers are there. David Greenspan has more papers now, a whole briefcase full. Greenspan stands when Ford enters. Mr. Ford, we need to discuss the breach of contract. You left the set without authorization for... He checks his notes. 14 hours. During that time, production was halted. We incurred significant costs. The studio is prepared to offer a settlement. You pay half the damages, $1.6 million. We agree not to pursue further legal action, and we keep this matter confidential. Ford sits down, looks at the papers, looks at Greenspan. No. Greenspan blinks. I'm sorry? Ford. I'm not paying to keep this quiet. I broke the contract. I saved a life. If that's a crime in your contract, then your contract is wrong. File it, Make it public. Let everyone see what you're suing me for. Marcus Webb leans forward. Harrison, please. Be reasonable. 1.6 million is fair. It's half. You can afford it. We all move on. Nobody needs to know. Ford shakes his head. I want people to know. I want it on record. I chose a human life over a filming schedule. If that destroys my career, fine. But I'm not hiding it. Greenspan and Webb exchange looks. Greenspan. Mr. Ford, if we proceed with full legal action, the penalties will be severe. Not just monetary. We will seek injunctions. You could be barred from working on major productions for years. Your reputation, my reputation, Ford interrupts, will be that I saved someone's life. I can live with that. He stands. File your lawsuit. I'll see you in court. He walks out. The door closes behind him. The two lawyers sit in silence. Webb puts his head in his hands. 2 weeks later, the case goes to arbitration. Hollywood doesn't like public trials. Bad publicity. Affects stock prices. Scares investors. So they use private arbitration. 3 judges. Closed proceedings. No media. The studio's legal team brings 14 witnesses. Producers, line producers, accountants. They present spreadsheets showing exact costs of every hour Ford was absent. They present the original contract, 47 pages, signed by Ford, signed by the studio, legally binding. Their argument is simple: precedent. If actors can break contracts for personal emergencies, then productions become uninsurable. Investors lose confidence. The entire system breaks down. David Greenspan delivers the closing argument. This is not about Mr. Ford's heroism. We acknowledge he saved a life. That's commendable. But contracts exist for a reason. If we allow this breach without consequences, we open the door to chaos. Any actor could claim an emergency and walk off set. Productions would never finish. Hundreds of millions of dollars would be at risk. We must enforce the contract. Ford's lawyer is a woman named Patricia Reeves, 61 years old, practiced law for 37 years, represented 12 actors in contract disputes, won 9. She doesn't bring witnesses, doesn't present spreadsheets. She brings one piece of evidence, a letter, 23 pages, handwritten from Sarah Chen. Patricia reads the letter to the judges. It takes 19 minutes. The letter describes Sarah's life, married 41 years, 3 children, 7 grandchildren. Retired teacher, spent 34 years teaching 2nd grade, describes the day she collapsed, describes the feeling of her heart stopping, describes waking up in the hospital, being told she was clinically dead for 16 minutes, being told a movie star flew a helicopter to save her. The letter ends with this: I don't know how much money Harrison Ford has. I don't know how much this lawsuit is worth. I don't care. What I know is that he chose my life over his money. He chose me, a stranger, a nobody, a retired teacher he'll never see again, over his career, over his reputation, over his contract. I'm alive because one man decided that some things are more important than money. If the court punishes him for that, then the court is telling every person in America that money is worth more than human life. And if that's true, then we've already lost everything that matters. Silence in the arbitration room. Long, heavy. The judges deliberate for 4 days. On the 5th day, they announce their decision. Ford is found in breach of contract. He must pay $800,000, half the original penalty. But the judges add something to the ruling, a footnote, recommendation for new industry standard. Going forward, all production contracts should include a humanitarian exception clause. Actors shall not be penalized for contract breaches related to verified medical emergencies where loss of life is imminent. The studio accepts the ruling. Ford pays the $800,000. The case is sealed, confidential settlement, but the footnote leaks. Within 6 months, it becomes known as the Harrison Ford Clause. Studios start adding it to contracts, quietly, without publicizing, without admitting why. By 2002, 200 contracts include the clause. By 2005, 340. By 2010, it's standard across the industry. But nobody credits Ford. Nobody writes articles about it. Nobody puts his name in the clause officially. It's just there, hidden in page 47, section 12.3, subsection D. Humanitarian exception. Actor may breach filming schedule for verified medical emergencies without penalty, provided emergency services confirm imminent loss of life. Sarah Chen tries to thank Ford personally. She writes him letters, 12 letters over 2 years. Ford never responds. She tries to arrange a meeting through his publicist. Ford declines. She appears on a morning talk show in 2003. Tells the story, says she wants to thank him. Ford's publicist releases a statement. Mr. Ford prefers to keep his private humanitarian work private. He appreciates Mrs. Chen's kind words, but requests no further contact. But Sarah doesn't give up. She can't. Her life is divided into 2 parts now, before July 14th, 2000. After July 14th, 2000, every birthday after that day feels like a gift. Every anniversary, every holiday with her grandchildren, all of it borrowed time. Time she wouldn't have without Harrison Ford. So she does the only thing she can. She lives fully, lives deliberately, volunteers at the hospital where she was saved, trains in CPR, teaches it to others, certifies 217 people in CPR over 18 years. In 2018, Sarah Chen dies, natural causes, 79 years old. In her will, she leaves $50,000 to the Search and Rescue Pilots Association. The note attached says, for more people like Harrison Ford to break more contracts when lives depend on it. The organization sends Ford a letter informing him of the donation. He sends back a check for $50,000. No note, just the check. They use the money to train volunteer pilots. 23 pilots certified in the first year. 14 successful rescues in the first 18 months. Ford never speaks publicly about Sarah Chen, never mentions the case in interviews, never writes about it in his memoir published in 2012. When a reporter asks him in 2019 about regrets in his career, he says, "I regret every time I didn't break a contract." The reporter laughs, thinks it's a joke. Ford doesn't laugh. The interview moves on. But there's something the public doesn't know. Every contract Ford signs now, every single one, has a handwritten addition in the margin of page 47, section 12.3. 7 words, written in blue ink, his handwriting. Humanitarian clause non-negotiable, HF. Studios accept it without question, some because they respect it, some because they're legally required to include it anyway, some because arguing with Harrison Ford costs more than it's worth. And something else happened, something quiet. Between 2000 and 2023, the Harrison Ford clause has been invoked 41 times. 41 actors broke filming to respond to emergencies, car accidents, heart attacks, drownings, fires. 27 people saved. Not one actor was penalized, not one studio sued, not one lawyer argued about precedent because precedent was set. By a man who decided that some moments aren't entertainment, they're life or death. Have you ever had to choose between what's legally right and what's morally right? Have you ever broken a rule because following it would cost someone everything? Let me know in the comments. Today, Sarah Chen's grandchildren are adults, 26, 24, and 21. They all know the story. They've all been taught CPR. They've all been told, when you save someone's life, you don't do it for recognition. You do it because it's right. You do it because some things are more valuable than money, than fame, than contracts. You do it because one day you might need someone to break the rules for you. And you hope, you pray, that when that day comes, there's someone like Harrison Ford nearby. Hollywood learned something that day in June 2000. It learned that some men don't fit into contracts, don't fit into schedules, don't fit into the machinery of production and profit and quarterly earnings reports. They learned that some men will always choose the person dying over the person paying. And once that choice is made, once that line is crossed, there's no going back. There's no settlement that makes it right, no confidentiality agreement that hides it, no legal argument that justifies the opposite. Ford is 82 years old now, still flies helicopters, still volunteers with search and rescue, still carries that radio on his belt, against policy, against advice, against common sense. But he carries it. Because 22 years before Sarah Chen, there was someone else. Someone he couldn't reach in time, someone whose name he's never said publicly, someone who died waiting for help that didn't come. And Ford made a promise that day. He promised himself that he would never be unable to help again, never be too far, never be without his helicopter, never be bound by a contract or a schedule or a lawyer's warning when someone's life was at stake. He's kept that promise for 43 years, saved 32 people in that time, 32 strangers who would be dead if he'd listened to the lawyers, if he'd stayed on set, if he'd valued contracts over humanity. The arbitration judges who ruled on his case in 2000 are all retired now. 2 of them have passed away. The third, Judge Margaret Lin, gave an interview in 2021. She was asked about the most important case she ever presided over. She didn't hesitate. "The Ford case," she said, "it taught me that the law exists to serve humanity, not the other way around. Sometimes the most just ruling is the one that admits the law was wrong. We penalized Harrison Ford $800,000 for saving a life. Every day since then, I've wondered if we should have penalized him at all. Or if we should have penalized the studio for trying to stop him. The case file is sealed, will remain sealed until 2050, but the footnote, the recommendation that became the Harrison Ford clause, that's public record. Buried in California contract law, Section 2855, Entertainment Industry Regulations, subsection 12. It doesn't mention his name, but everyone knows. Everyone in Hollywood knows. When you see that clause in your contract, when you see that exception for humanitarian emergencies, when you see that protection for actors who choose lives over schedules, you're seeing Harrison Ford's legacy, the one he never talks about, the one he'll never take credit for, the one that saves lives every year, and unfortunately, they don't make men like Harrison Ford anymore.